Buenas, Madam Speaker and members of the Committee on Health. My name is Johnnie Rosario, and I oppose Bill number 291 and any legislation that dictates the life of a pregnant woman. The government has no cause to involve itself in pregnancy. I understand that once the child is born, the state has every interest in the protection of the child if the child's life or welfare is placed in any danger. But until that time, the mother is the sole vessel of the pregnancy, and her life and welfare is what should count in the eyes of the law. As a society, we must come to terms with the fact that life begins at birth, not at conception. The ability for the child to have life rests solely on the pregnant woman's ability to provide the child nutrients through gestation. It all happens within a woman's body. To that point, our bodies are ours and not the government's. We cannot and should not live in a state where the government has the ability to dictate what we do with our bodies. It is fascist, to say the least. If I may compare it to the recent controversy of the coronavirus vaccine, I find the government dictates unsettling. This is 21st century America, and the fact that our government would come between the decision a person makes in consultation with their doctor is the most un-American precept possible. Anti-abortion statutes, just like vaccine mandates, rob us of our freedoms in the most violative ways. These are our bodies that are at the heart of these discussions. And if we accept that life begins at birth and that fetuses in the gestational process are wards of the women and not of the state, then there are no ifs, ands, or buts about the fact that whatever happens during the pregnancy is a medical and personal matter upon which the American way grants us choice. Before I conclude, I have been bothered by certain sentiments espoused by some in favor of anti-abortion statutes. I have heard some people assigning guilt upon mothers who have chosen to abort their pregnancies. They say these women have sinned. Perhaps that is true, but in the crafting of laws in our democracy, let it be known that it's their sin, not the government's. Let these women find their peace and have their peace, and let us not regress as an American people.
Buenas, Madam Speaker and members of the Committee on Health. My name is Troy Torres, and I support Bill number 291 and any legislation that protects the lives of people. If it is the truth that life begins at conception, then the state has an absolute interest in protecting the life and the welfare of that child, no matter its age. Any policy that veers from that foundation simply creates a double standard in our murder laws. If the premise for allowing the choice to terminate a child in the womb is the autonomy of the host, then why do our laws not allow us to terminate the lives of 8-year-olds who cannot walk, see, hear, or even feed on their own? What of elderly people who are bedridden and must be fed with tubes and incontinent? They too cannot live without the support of others. Their lives are dependent upon their hosts. Are their lives not worthy of protection under our laws against murder? Protecting life at all stages and of all ages speaks to our progression as a civilization intent on its betterment. The social ills we suffer and we fear will beset us have only grown since Roe v. Wade created a culture of death. Laws that allow the termination of life speak to society's transgressions against itself and our willingness to excuse our avarice, vanity, and corruption that have distorted the quality of life by distilling life itself. It is true that medical privacy and autonomy over our health decisions should prevail over government interference between a doctor and a patient, but when the decision involves the termination of a pregnancy, there is a third person involved. And of all the people in that room, it is the unborn child who has no voice, who is most vulnerable, and whom the government has an absolute interest to protect. Life begins at conception, and thus life must be protected from that point by the laws of this land. Johnnie and I have different views on this subject, but we remain partners and the best of friends.
We've spoken about our views, and not once has our conversation become nasty.
This discussion about life and freedom affects the bedrock of our civilization, and so it must continue on.
And it must continue with civility and respect. Thank you for listening to our viewpoints, and God bless you all.